Hey guys, it's Brijette with Sandy Seed Company, and today I am in a beautiful garden and we're going to be talking about butternut squash. How you grow it, when you grow it, why the name is very confusing, and everything you need to know so you can be making delicious butternut squash soup come this fall. Alright, if you've grown butternut squash and you've failed before, there's one thing that you really have to know that makes the difference every single year between success and failure. And in this video, I'm going to talk about what that is, so stick around so you can have an amazing bounty of butternut squash. Okay, so I'm here underneath this really cool trellis and we are looking at some awesome butternut squash. Look at these little babies. And look, the plant is loaded. I mean, from the ground up, there's so many butternut squashes. They're all in their tiny little baby stage and it's going to take some time for them to get better. But if you want to grow butternut squash in zone 9 and 10, how do you do it? Well, first of all, butternut squash and all of the squashes are considered a large seed, which means you can easily direct sow them. They can be put into the ground and they're going to sprout right where you plant them. Now, a key thing to making that successful is you have to have irrigation, or you have to be really disciplined to make sure you're watering the entire time the seed is germinating. The most common mistake I see with gardeners, with new gardeners, is they plant a seed, they water it, they go to work, they come home, they water it again. Well, there's a time in between that where the seed dries out, and if the seed dries out during germination, it's going to shrivel up and die, and it's never actually going to make it through the soil. So you have to irrigate or water very regularly to get that seed to germinate. A quick pro tip that I actually like to do for our farm is we will actually germinate a lot of squash seeds in cell blocks, in actual little blocks of soil. And we literally just get them to the germination stage. They have popped out, their cotyledons are there, and then we transplant them out because I have more control over keeping a tray of squash moist versus a whole 100-foot row. So that's a little quick pro tip. I don't let them get very big because in general, squash doesn't really need to be transplanted, but in our really hot climate, water is the most limiting factor, and it's the most common thing people do wrong. So whether you direct sow or you do the little plug, make sure they stay moist the whole time. They're going to germinate quickly and readily because they're a big seed. And just keep in mind, space-wise, you're going to have something like this. Now let's just touch on how this is being grown. What is awesome about this is going up over a trellis for space savings. Now, you don't have to do it this way. You can absolutely just let it spill over the side of a garden bed, go out into the yard. What I don't recommend is planting a butternut squash in the middle of your raised bed because it's going to commandeer a lot of space that you can use for other crops. Instead, do it on the edge, let it fall over, because remember, the only part of the plant that needs soil contact is the main root system, and let it grow as far as you want to let it. Now, this is really cool because it makes this magical little space that you can come and hang out. Like, I totally want to just have my coffee in here. It's just so cool. And especially if you've got kids, it's awesome to show them where they are. It's a little bit easier to see them, so you're less likely to forget. And there is some virtue to this in that it's a little bit harder for some rodents and things to come and eat the squash. Now, it's not impossible, but since you're getting it up off the ground, it just is a little bit more protected. Okay, so now let's talk about the when. And I want to touch on something that's really important, and I've got tons of videos about this, but I have to repeat it because there's lots of new gardeners out there, and you may not know that even though a winter squash is called a winter squash, which is very annoying, it is grown in the summertime. The category of calling something a winter squash versus a summer squash is to differentiate when you actually eat the squash. So summer squash is going to be like zucchini. It's young, it's tender. You pick it off the plant and it's only going to last, a few days on the counter before it starts to go downhill. Whereas a winter squash has a hard outside peel, which means it can sit on the counter for weeks, months, for a very long time. And so traditionally back in the day, those squashes were saved and they were eaten through the winter months. That's why it's called a winter squash. I know. It's crazy, right? The reason why I really want to drive this point home is because I don't want you thinking that you would plant winter squash in the winter. All of squash all together, squash, all of the cucurbits like cucumbers, they're all grown during the warm season, which in zone 9 and 10 is really direct sowing anytime after March, all the way through the warm months when the days are longer. So key tip there. So we've learned that you can direct sow the seed. These seeds here were direct sown right next to the trellis. He's got irrigation, so they germinated quickly and easily. And now they're growing up the trellis and they're looking really beautiful. These plants are exceptionally healthy looking. I don't see any powdery mildew. They really look great. Keep in mind, part of the reason why these plants look so good is they're in complete full sun. Squash needs to be grown in full sun because these big leaves are this big so they can gather as much sunlight as possible. If you're growing in a semi-shaded area, they're more likely to have powdery mildew and other foliar diseases and just not be nearly as happy. So there's actually 2 plants on this trellis that are growing up, that are being trained to go up. And the amount of plants you have does help with fruit set. And why is that? Well, any squash, any cucurbit needs to have pollination between the male and female flower. The more plants you have, the more likely a bee is going to go to the male flower and the female flower. Now, if you're having a problem where you see your squash start to grow and then it starts to brown and like fall off, that is a telltale sign that you have poor pollination. Well, luckily for you, guess what? You can pollinate it on your own. So you can find a male flower, which this is a male flower, and you know it's a male flower because if you look on the back side, it's just a long stem, okay? And, you know, not to be graphic, but the inside looks, you know, a little male-like, we'll say that. You are going to take this and take the pollen from here and put it in a female flower. Now, female flowers are easy to find because they have little baby squashes on the back end of it. So look here. Look, it's a baby squash. And look, there's already a bee in there. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to take your job. Please come back. Okay, well, he was doing what I'm going to do now, which is basically just take this pollen. I'm just breaking the flowers so I can get more in there. And look, I'm just gonna put the pollen in there. That's it. That's all I'm doing. It's not rocket science. All that needs to happen is the male pollen needs to go into the female flower so that we can ensure that this is fertilized and becomes a happy butternut squash. Now, I'm not worried on a plant like this. There's so many of them. We just saw a bee doing its thing. Really not worried about it. But if you want a fun science lesson for kids, you can teach them that. And this is also the same process you would do with something like watermelon, cucumbers as well. So if you're seeing little fruits that start to brown and fall off, you might want to give it a little bit of a helping hand. Okay, let's talk about some of the key tips just to wrap this video up on what you need for butternut squash. Number 1, any cucurbit, don't overhead water. I know it feels good with the hose, but they need to be watered at the ground level and their leaves need to dry out so that you can prevent or at least manage powdery mildew. We fertilize at the time of planting with a granular fertilizer like our Darn Good fertilizer that actually goes into the hole where we then plant the seed. Then we fertilize once it fruit set with a fish and guano. That's just basically going to help them have enough energy to grow and really put out a lot of flowers and a lot of fruit. Squash is a very easy to grow crop. It doesn't require a lot of extra nutrients, but if you have new soil and a new raised bed, you're definitely going to want to fertilize. Lastly, let's talk about picking. None of these squash are ready to eat. They don't look like the butternut squash that you see in the store, but let's say one of these does look like a butternut squash that you would get from the store. The telltale sign that it's ready is the thumb test. So you can actually just use your finger and press down on the squash and see, is the skin nice and hard? The reason why you want that is because that nice hard outer peel is what's going to help the squash basically store better and be able to sit on your counter for weeks or even months. Now, the beauty of butternut squash is you can literally just leave them to grow until the vines die. The longer you leave them on the vine, the more sugar the actual butternut squash will have and the better tasting it is. So when you're looking at your checklist of things you need to do in the fall, harvesting your butternut squash should be like the last thing. Like I said, the plants can completely die and then you can easily just pull the squash off when they're ready. But if you're really excited and you're waiting to eat one, do the thumb test first to make sure that it's at least fully developed and it has as much sugar as it can so that it can be tasty. All right, so this is one of my favorite parts of the video. It's where I ask you to subscribe to our channel because you are the best part of why I do these videos. I want to connect with you and I want to know what you know and help you make your garden as best as possible. So comment on this video and tell me if there's a variety of butternut squash that you absolutely love or a variety of winter squash in general that you just have to have every single year. Who knows, we might include it in our catalog. All right guys, so remember, even though a butternut squash is called a winter squash, do not be deceived. It is grown in the summertime, but they're kept all the way through the winter for eating well into the winter months. Now this is a classic variety that we love because it grows so well here and it's great for cooking, for baking. You can make soups out of it. You can puree it and make it into breads. It really is a tried and true fabulous variety. So grow it in your garden today so that you can enjoy it in the kitchen come those nice cool winter months.